I am at a place called Stonea Camp, which is described as a hill fort. It's a couple of miles to the east of March, which is a fenland market town. I must have driven past the hill because I can't quite see any hills here, but it is described as Britain's lowest hill fort. I think that could do with a bit of a clean. It is a Celtic monument, obviously, possibly inhabited by Romans and later by Saxons. On a very sunny day in September. This is normally full of sheep. Oh, I can see some sheep over there. It's obviously built on a little bit of raised land, because it would have been surrounded by the fens. The fens themselves were drained in 1800s sometimes by the Dutch, and that's why there's not much water around today. You can see the earthworks today, they're quite prominent, but I believe an archaeological society did come and dig them out a little bit so that you can see them a bit better. And it is a very large site. It does stretch all the way back to that second clump of trees there. I believe it was reused by the Normans. They had a manor here, and this area would have still been wetland in the Norman period, so this would have still been an island in that time. As you can see, it is very flat everywhere. I think that's March over there in the distance. I thought it was going to be windier, but it's not. Would have been quite a prominent landmark. Would have been able to see it from some distance, sticking out of the fens. Lots of birds around, lots of crows by the sound of it. Do have some nice interesting little notice boards around. This is the inner defensive bank of earthworks which have survived for over 2,000 years. The trees on the horizon grow on the next fen island at Wimbledon, which is obviously another little village over there. So this would have been a high area in the landscape. That does actually look over there as if it's a bit higher. If you go over that way a little bit, I believe there's a place called Warboys, which was once upon a time a volcano, which, looking around this area, don't really see much in the way of volcanoes around here. Looks like the gateway would have been over there, which is kind of the way it's sort of moving itself. Manoeuvre between the trees. This is my favourite type of weather. Sun's out a little bit, it's a little bit nippy in the air. Here we've got some sheeps. There are a few hill forts, this type of monument around in Cambridgeshire or East Anglia. Not that many compared to other areas. This is the outer bank. Several phases of defence according to this in the prehistoric period. Earliest finds from the Stonea Island are Paleolithic hand axes and choppers. Some Neolithic tools. Some pottery. That would have been an inner bank there. We're now on an outer bank. How defensible these structures would have been, probably most of that out there would have been fenland. Marshy, boggy, you wouldn't have been able to move across it, you'd have had to stick to causeways, etc. So even though this is a very large site, you'd need lots of people to defend it. It probably would be quite defendable, because you'd only need to defend the gateways. People would even struggle to get across on boats, unless there was areas of open water. Wouldn't have been much trouble for the Romans, places like this. Masters of siege work and warfare. I think you're supposed to stay inside the fence, not get on the outside of it. Luckily never been attacked by any animals. Had the inquisitive cow come over and the odd horse. And this says medieval Stonea. Earliest records of Stonea are Anglo Saxon charters noting that, I don't even know if I could pronounce that, Aescwen of Stonea, a widow, sold her estate and fishery to Wulfstan of Dalham, who then gave it to the monastery of Ely in AD 955. In 1086, the Domesday Book recorded that the grange for Doddington Manor, which was held by the Abbot of Ely, was situated on Stonea Island. Known as Stitch's Farm, the farm once stood here, and Stonea Camp was first recorded in 1251. So quite naturally, when the Normans came to this area, especially as they had to contend with Hereward the Wake, who was a bit of a rebel, caused the Normans a bit of trouble. He used a lot of these islands to set out on little raids against the Normans, etc. He and his men knew these areas like the back of their hands, whereas the Normans didn't. They relied on guides, etc. and especially if they're local, you never know whether or not a guide is helping you or hindering you. But he would quite often use these little islands for his base camps, striking out against the Normans. I think he was eventually betrayed by the Bishop of Ely or something and captured, but nothing happened to him. He didn't get executed or anything. Although these banks and ditches don't look that defendable, exactly that high, but they would have been more pronounced, no doubt. There is a modern dyke there. I don't think that was there in the medieval period, although it may have been built there on the if there had been a stream or something there. That would have been probably been several feet higher, and then on top of that you would have had a palisade of some kind, no doubt wood. I don't think the Normans built stone here at any time. Sorry sheeps, but I'm coming up there and you're going to move. Obviously this convenient little walkway wouldn't have been here, but that's still quite a substantial bank, especially if it's another couple of feet taller, and then on top of that there's a palisade if you've got to try and get up it. Little tower, look. This is the highest point of Stonea Camp. As you can see, it goes from there, that's the outer part. You can see the inner bank there, all the way over to where my car is over there. Right the way over to where them reeds are. That's pretty much what the whole area would have looked like in the medieval period. You can see an outer ditch over there, all the way around to this bit. Sheep thinks I'm talking about him, or her I should say. Apparently there was a massive Roman tower built here at one point. Oh, it was built next to the fort. About 16 metres square with an apse. And was built by stone imported from Barnack, which is the other side of Peterborough. A lot of buildings are built with Barnack. Stonea Tower was deliberately destroyed around 2000 AD. Well, I don't know if that was the Boudica Rebellion time. So this stretches through the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, Roman, Saxon, Medieval and Post-Medieval. So it has been around for a good few thousand years. Lucky there's nothing around here that people needed to build on, otherwise it probably wouldn't have been here. You don't get many aircraft around here. There There are some, obviously because it's flat around here, there are some military bases. A couple of American ones and British. Here's a bit of a gateway. I don't know if this is an original gateway, but it does kind of tie in with that gateway over there, or a break in the bank over there. Possibly could have been. Like later on Motte and Bailey castles, this place and them would have relied heavily on water as one of their defences. You wouldn't have been able to defend the entire length of a place like this with, you'd have needed too many people inside, too many resources to be stockpiled, too much food, water. You'd hopefully only have to defend the gateways or somewhere like that, or retreat to an inner enclosure, which would have been smaller and easier to defend. That's pretty much the idea of a Motte and Bailey castle. Defend the gateway and then retreat to the motte. If it was attacked, it looked like they would break in. Now I'm getting attacked by grasshoppers. I think this would probably be more likely to be an entrance way here, especially as it goes across to a little village over there. I know the farmers probably travelled through here several times and flattened the area, but you can see the land does dip away slightly there, so we do look as though we're slightly higher up. Oh, there's a bird of prey there. Not an expert on birds of prey, but still in the outer enclosure here. Should imagine this was where they would keep their animals. That's definitely pheasants, an introduced species. Along with many others, including rabbits. Not a massive fan of rabbits, especially on monuments like this. They start to dig them up and destroy them. Vast majority of Motte and Bailey castles in the country are left to fall apart, destroyed by rabbits. Luckily this thing doesn't have too many trees on it, and it's kept fairly sort of brambly free, what with grass growing on it, and the sheep regularly graze in it. This does look like an entranceway. What with this extra extra bit here sticking out, looks a bit more defensive. I agree with you, sheeps. Whatever you just said. Talking of rabbits, you can see it's quite wet down here, look. I don't know whether that's a man-made hole or whether that's natural, but you can certainly see there. And that's standing water because it's very stagnant, you can smell it. It's not moving water in any way. But a lot of the land around here would have looked like that. Although I should imagine it would move a bit more. It would have fed in there from the ditches. It's very molting time here, isn't it? Not sure if that's part of the enclosure there, or whether this is I think this is the outer wall. Although it could stretch out to that corner there in that field, and then back to here. Yeah, I think this is the outer boundary. Very, very big site to walk around. No doubt you would have had roundhouses in here, several of them. Larger building for the chieftain. Although this side doesn't look as high, or even as defensible. Perhaps this was much wetter on this side, which would have been more of a defence. As you can see, there's lots of reeds over this side. And this is pretty much what most of the area around here would have looked like. There's a place not far from here, just outside Peterborough, called Flag Fen, which is heavily associated with Francis Pryor, who appeared on many an episode of Time Team. And that gives you quite a good representation of what it would have been like around this area in the sort of Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age periods, with all these reeds. How difficult it would have been to move around this area. reeds and then larger open bodies of water. There is a causeway at Flag Fen that they found. No doubt there would have been causeways from here and around the area. Oh, there's a large flock of ducks there. Don't know if they're all males. No, there's a couple of females. It must be fed from underground, because it's obviously there's no little rivers that come into it or streams or anything. It's pretty much always here throughout the year. Must get fed from somewhere. But that's pretty much what the surrounding area would have looked like until it was eventually drained. I think we've pretty much walked around it now. It's taken us nearly 15 to 20 minutes to walk all the way round. This is back to the inner defences or defensive wall. Obviously there's a lot of subsidence. I think if they hadn't have dug them out a little bit more as to the way they are today, I think this is, although I think this is slightly more modern, some of these ditches and banks, because they have dug them out and piled it up. Give it a slightly more accurate representation of what it would look like. And here we are at the beginning, back where we started. And that is Stonea Camp, Britain's lowest hill fort. I'd probably kind of describe it more as a fort or something than a hill fort, to be honest, but it's worth a little visit out, even if it's only for like half an hour. There is a little garden centre on the opposite to the end, near the entranceway. You can stop and have a little coffee or something to eat. Stonea Camp.